just like past the countdown. Sorry. Yes.
So this is.
Should we, let's just
We don't see live, but there's a bit of a delay. And then,
yeah,
just show you our home page. We have all of our previous videos on our page, so if you see, so we'll be added.
You visited this week, so you sort of shade.
well, just the sports stuff, but I do give the lectures. So we had like researchers group there for info until last night, and then we have two here now. They're doing more sweet people, so
Who's supposed to be researching this?
so the ones that just like nutrition. Comparisons, taking calcium.
To say it, everyone now looks like we're fake talking and people in the news. Sound check.
No, they're more
Good.
interested in.
Do you want me to say more?
Check, sound check.
Sound check. Check, check. Sound check. Sound check.
Sound check, sound check.
Check, check.
Check, check, 1, 2, check.
All me, sound check.
Check, check. All right.
We've got 9 sites watching now, so that's about a third of our audience are signed up already. New York is on. Priestville, Saskatchewan says hi. Hello, Priestville. Hello, Miller Place, New York.
They tend to be classrooms and full rooms of students, so it's
Everyone's supposed to be here. Certainly goes with microphone or it just
No,
comes through.
it just comes through her,
Oh, okay.
so we're just streaming out.
Yeah. So they type in a question and then we answer that way, okay. Yeah, I got you. Technology.
So they can
Did
see us,
Fletcher
but we
discuss
can't see
that?
them.
I believe you might have
Oh,
this.
okay, you just select.
They can see it.
Yeah.
The thing I don't like about this is I watch myself. What was that?
sort of regretting sitting here.
Also be aware that the audience can see under the table. Sometimes we forget about that.
You think I wore hats today?
That's precisely why I wear my glitter shoes. Like this. You can see.
Bring on the light.
Yeah. Got 10 on, and we've got still about 3 minutes if anyone needs last minute washroom or anything.
Have you heard from Maddie lately? She's here, right?
Yeah, a couple of days ago.
She's here for like.
Good morning, Cranberry Portage.
That's where I used to work.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. They're watching.
She's gonna come to law school because she so I was doing a PhD. So, yeah, she was busy, but yeah, she was able to get so she's doing a few classes from here. So she's like Skyping in to teach her day, Skyping into something else she has to do.
Is
Just responses to do.
Yeah, she was
Yeah. If you could come, we'll give you like 2 or 3 hours off.
And so,
She'll
one
be
and two.
to school.
Just missed her.
Thanks so much. She
I
actually
was with Heidi the day before.
and had artistic career yesterday.
And Gillum is on. Good morning, Gillum. And Joey, I don't know where you're from, but good morning as well.
Rose tea.
I like lawyers.
BT rules.
Good Good morning from HS Paul School in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Right, I think we're just about ready to start. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We have an exciting topic today. We're going to be discussing subarctic careers in science. We have a variety of panelists here to answer all of your questions and to participate in the conversation. It's quite exciting. We're expected to reach about 800 youth from across North America. We're streaming as far away as New York, Nova Scotia, Texas, Montana, and of course all over Manitoba and Ontario as well, and into Saskatchewan. So before we get started, my name is Jacqueline Monteith. I am one of 2 science coaches in Frontier School Division, and I would like to give a huge thank you to all of our supporters. First of all, Frontier School Division for making this all happen. We also have a huge thank you going out to Right Click, which is Frontier's Technology and Support Services Department. Duke of Marlborough School, you tend to sweep in and save the day on these events, so thank you very much for that. Also to the Churchill Northern Studies Centre for allowing us to stream here and hosting us once again at our beautiful location here on the tundra in Churchill, Manitoba. And of course to all of our panelists and local branches and organizations who you'll all spend the next bit of time meeting. So without further ado, I would like to allow our panelists to do an introduction to themselves. Feel free to start submitting your questions and we'll just get started. Eric, we'll start with you.
Hello, I'm the other science coach, along with Jacqueline in Frontier School Division. My name is Reeve Kassam and I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba. It's nice to see you all.
I'm Jill Larkin. I'm a resource management officer in Wapusk National Park. I have a science-based position to do monitoring and research in Wapusk, but because we have a small staff here in Churchill, I get to do a wide variety of other jobs, like bear monitoring, presentations for tourists, and a lot of logistical support for many different projects.
Great, thank you.
My name is KT Miller, and I am a media and outreach manager for Polar Bears International. So my job is actually taking scientific information and animating it and putting it into videos so that people can understand it. I do a lot of tech like these live streams, especially out on a tundra buggy here in Churchill, where we have a live polar bear cam. In our organization, we have polar bear scientists, we have people that do media, graphic design, outreach, and logistics for all sorts of different things that are science related for polar bears across the Arctic.
Thank you.
My name's Dave Alcorn. Morning. I'm a Churchill resident. I work as a tour guide and naturalist out here. And my job, really what I love about my job is I'm showcasing what the Arctic has to offer. It's wildlife, it's nature, and I like to share that through stories.
Thank you.
My name's Leanne Fishbach, and I'm the science coordinator and the research scientist on staff here at the Churchill Northern Studies Centre. So I get to live and work in this great environment. I have a background in chemistry, so I'm mostly interested in freshwater geochemistry and how that changes over time. But as Jill mentioned, I do a lot of other things, so live stream events like this, working with technology, doing science outreach with various people who are visiting Churchill.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jeff Chechmuch. I'm a conservation officer for the Department of Sustainable Development here in Churchill. My job is administering and delivering the province's polar bear alert program.
Okay, thank you. I just want to do a quick check with sound. We have a message coming in that sound is a little bit off, so if you can hear me, please let me know. If there's sound issues, please let me know through the chat feature as well, and we'll
That's a really great question, Haley. Thanks very much. So I myself don't do DNA testing, but here at the center we actually do have lab facilities available, and we have several researchers who actually do bring their analysis equipment up from the south and do DNA testing here in Churchill. So one of the techniques that we use for DNA is looking at what we call environmental DNA. So we're able to take bulk samples, for example, a water sample, and then be able to do analysis of that to be able to tell what's actually living in that particular water system, what particular organisms are there. A lot of DNA analysis also does get done in very specific labs, and one of the examples of that would be the Biodiversity Institute in Guelph, Ontario, where a lot of DNA samples are analyzed here from the Churchill region.
Thank you. Anybody have anything to add on DNA? All right, next question. Next question is coming from the students from HS Paul. Good morning. Wondering if anyone has ever had a direct polar bear encounter. So I'm sure all of you have at some point or another. If anyone is willing to share a story, this question is open to all of you. Dave, you look like you have something good to share.
A few. I think, my great question. I definitely, all of us have at some point. I'm sure I haven't had the most. And, I think my first polar bear encounter was I worked for a local company in town, and I went to start the bus in the morning. I started the bus in the morning, and you do your walk around check. It's dark, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. So I go into the bus, I start it, I come out, I walk around the bus, and when I get back to the door to get in the bus, there's a big set of bear tracks right through my tracks in the snow. So I just jumped on the bus right away. Right away jumped on the bus, and as I walked to the back of the bus, I could see the bear right at the back of the bus, just right by the back lights.
Was he stalking you?
I don't know if it was stalking me, I don't know, but it just, the closeness, you go in, you've got your lights on, you've got your flashlight, you see nothing, there's no tracks, there's no sign of anything there. And just from the time it takes to walk around the bus, he's walked right past. Wow. And it really sort of, that was back in probably 2008 or 9, and that was the first time I'd say, it's really real. Like it's really real.
Thank you. Anybody else? Polar bear encounter story?
We always get that question, and we are super careful, and actually in Churchill we haven't had any experiences like that I know of. Like our staff, we're always extra caution, always driving a lap with lights to check first, just because we don't want to risk having a bad encounter with a polar bear, because unfortunately a lot of those encounters, if they happen, means that the polar bear might not end up getting to survive. So we're super careful. And yeah, I don't have any of those stories. Everybody always wants them.
This might be a good segue to you, Jeff, and what you do to prevent encounters with your polar bear alert program.
Sure. A big component of the Polar Bear Alert program is public education and teaching people. The big thing is not to put yourself in a situation where you're going to have a negative encounter with a polar bear. The Polar Bear Alert program's been in place since about 1983, and the big component of it is we have a Polar Bear Alert line. So if anybody sees a polar bear in or around the community of Churchill, they'll call this number, and myself and numerous staff will go out, and we'll go out and haze that bear out of the community, or basically deal directly, with that bear. The idea behind the Polar Bear Alert program is during the migration, which is this time of the year, we're trying to get these bears around the community so that they can continue their way on their migration path to that first ice on Hudson's Bay.
Thank you. I'd like to get back to our main topic about job availability or careers based in science. What would you say is the most prominent feature of your career that involves science? Are we going to start with you from an educational perspective?
Sure, yeah. I have a background in microbiology and many chemistries. However, I got into education about 7-ish years ago, starting as a science teacher. So I worked overseas for a couple of years, and then I worked here in Churchill for 2 years at the Duke of Marlborough School. After having spent a lot of time in the classroom with students, then I began to change my career and join Jacqueline as a Frontier School science coach. And so my job generally entails going to all the schools in our school division and promoting science and sustainability, and also just having students explore the wonder and curiosity of science with activities and demos and labs and everything. You get to work with everybody and all the teachers as well. So one of the most prominent features of the position is really just exploring the variety of models that you can use in teaching, and that constant evolution of how students' minds like yours change and your learning styles change, and us adapting to those styles and keeping you curious.
Great, thank you. Jill, how does science come into your job and what you do on a daily basis?
Well, my job is a science-based position. So I work on various research projects with different researchers from universities, also with Leanne and her staff, all in Wapask National Park. And I also work with different university courses. So I help instruct one of the University of Manitoba field courses. We stay at Nestor 1, which is a remote camp in the park that's only accessible by helicopter in the summer and snowmobile in the winter. And we work on lemming trapping to estimate the population density. We do Canada goose nest searches, fox research, and various other projects that change from year to year. But I also work with groups of high school students. There's a group called ISOMER, the International Student-Led Arctic Monitoring and Research Program, and we work with students from Baltimore, Winnipeg, and Churchill. And we go into the park and we collect data on vegetation, permafrost, and then side projects on caribou, foxes. That stuff changes every year. And we also have a fall component where we do polar bear whisker printing. That's not with my job at Parks Canada. That's something that I do on the side with another one of my jobs. The polar bear's whisker prints are like a human's fingerprints. You can identify individual bears based on their whisker prints using a software program. And we're actually, like, our focus in that program is on climate change, and we're actually talking about starting a southern isomer program, not necessarily related to my job at Parks, but my other job. And we're going to be looking at the impacts of climate change on coral reefs in the south. So that's a couple years away in the making. Like, we're going to go do a scouting trip this winter. But the Earth is all connected. Like, climate change isn't only impacting the Arctic and subarctic, it has impacts all over the world. So we thought it was neat to try and make that connection.
Great, and I know you'll be calling me for help in your scouting trips on warm climates this winter.
Yeah.
And for you, where is science most prominent in your job?
Polar Bears International Science and Research really leads all of the work that we do. We're a science-based organization, so we fund a lot of research, and we do some research ourselves. For example, we have maternal denning studies that we've been conducting for about a decade on the North Slope of Alaska, and now for 3 or 4 years in Svalbard, where we put remote cameras near polar bear dens where a female would be inside a den, and we get footage of the female emerging from the den, and we can learn all sorts of things from that footage. You know, how many days did the mother stay near the den before she leaves to head out on the sea ice? How many cubs does she come out with? Does she come out with 3 but only leave with 2? What sort of things are happening? And so my job is to work with the scientists doing that research and turn it into, say, a video or an animation or a graphic that helps people understand understand what that research means for polar bears. So science leads all of the work that we do, and in my job in particular, it's taking that science and finding ways to communicate that in all sorts of different avenues so that people can learn from it.
Good, thank you. Dave?
So as a naturalist and tour guide, I don't work directly with science typically. I sometimes support science. What I do is I show people what's here. I expose them to some of the projects that happened in the area. I show them the research facility. I show them the land. We go on small hikes or small walks, and I inspire a lot of the younger ones. I would hope, you know, that we get a lot of our age demographic is the older demographic typically, sort of 50 and above would be our normal demographic here. Many of those people work as scientists, as chemists, as in all walks of life. The younger ones, we have several high school students here, and I definitely interest them in working in the northern regions. I interest them in working in the colder parts of the country. I'd like to think that they would come back to these regions and at least inspire other people and show them what's up here. But I don't work with science directly.
I disagree. I think you work with science directly at all times, but in a different way, as a tour operator, in a different way. Leanne, same question.
Yeah, so science is a really important part of what we do here at the Churchill Northern Study Center, science and education around our scientific studies. And I would also disagree with Dave because he worked for me for a while, so I think you did do science and it was an important part of your job. But one of the really exciting things for me working here is not just being able to, as a chemist, do science, but actually to help other people do science. And one of the things we say at the center is we like to make science happen, and really just helping researchers or scientists who are trying to work in the area. Maybe they've worked here for a really long time, or maybe they're brand new, just to help them actually get what it is that they want done, so that they're then able to go home with their particular samples, or maybe stay here, or work with someone like KT to actually visualize their science or to promote their particular science. And I think one of the things that really excites me about the job is the opportunity to do a lot of those different things around science. So science is really the core, but so many different things that we can do with it.
Great, thank you. And Jeff?
I don't deal a lot directly with science. However, my biggest component with the polar bear program is public safety, and just as importantly, the bear safety as well. So as part of our program, sometimes we have bears that end up getting captured and having to go to the polar bear holding facility. However, there are some, I guess, science aspects from some of the information that we're taking off of those bears, and they go to our regional wildlife manager, and then she kind of compiles the data and is able to, I guess, articulate some of the stuff that are happening with our bears here in Churchill.
Great, thank you. So we have about 20 questions that have come up in that time that we're going to get to, but there's a couple that I'd like to address first. So first of all, we have some students requesting a shout out to Mr. Cox. So hello, a shout out. And my favorite question of the day, do polar bears live with Santa? Yes, yes they do. They absolutely do. Without a doubt. All right, so here we go. Also a shout out if you've said hello and I haven't said hello back, or just to let you know that we're here and we see you. So we have a question here from New York, Miller Place. How are bears adapted to a cold and wet environment as the Arctic, and how are people adapted as well? Dave, you're out on the land all the time, so what do you do to adapt to the Arctic? We'll start with the people perspective.
So how do I keep warm? How do I adapt? I don't know if we can acclimatize, or if we just accept the climate for what it is. I rarely feel the cold when I'm outside. I'm always the mentality of carrying lots and lots of layers, and if I need to take something off, I'll take something off. And I think even in the summer months, we sometimes forget. We can wake up in the morning, it's shorts and t-shirts weather, but in the matter of minutes, like, you need a sweater, you need a hat, you need gloves. Like, living in these conditions, you just have to be prepared for anything. especially this time of year, we could be stuck here for days. I might not get home today. There could be a blizzard this afternoon. I could be stuck here till the weekend, and that's just the reality of it. The adaptations we make on a daily basis for everything, for keeping warm, for transportation, for everything.
Thank you. I'll continue with the human aspect of it. Arif, you went from teaching in a very hot climate in Egypt all the way to Churchill. How did you find it? How did you adapt?
Oh, it was a bit different. Yeah, teaching in I mean, the funny thing is they're both deserts, right, essentially. It was extremely hot in one temperature and then extremely cold at another, but your method of adaptation is quite similar. And I sort of have to agree, is that it's not so much that you adapt because adaptation takes time, but you simply accept the climates that you're in. And you take precautions, so in extreme heat, you have to be very cognizant of how much water you have on a regular basis and how much shade you're getting. And here, it's kind of the opposite. You look for those things. You're looking for heat, and you're looking to stay warm, and trying not to expose too much of your body to the wind, which is, I think, one of the main factors that control the climate up here is it does get cold, but it's really the wind that changes your life. Kind of like the blizzard we experienced up here a couple years ago. I think we all remember that one. It was winds that were gale force winds and dropped temperatures as low as -62. And in that case, you simply don't go outside. But your best bet is to just stay warm, have food, shelter, and ride it out.
Great, thank you. I'm going to expand the adaptation question to include all organisms here in the north. So if you have anything to add from a natural perspective, adaptations that happen in the Arctic.
I could speak a little bit to polar bear adaptations, and I'm sure there's lots of other people that could expand upon it, but polar bears are made for the cold, right? They have black skin, they've got white fur, they have 2 layers of that fur, kind of an undercoat that's more almost like a down coat that keeps them super warm, and then guard hairs that are a little bit longer and maybe help catch the wind and other things. They have long claws that give them really good traction, and then additionally on the pads of their feet, they have little things called papillae, which it almost acts like the grip on like a tire and helps them walk on the ice. You know, and like other organisms in the north, like their ears tend to be a little smaller, they're conserving heat. So pretty much everything about a polar bear is adapted for living in the harsh Arctic environment.
Great, thank you. Other organisms that may have adaptations?
Yeah, I'll maybe just talk about a few of the other ones. So yeah, Katie, great example. Polar bears are built for the cold. So those organisms that aren't built for the cold but still want to hang out in an environment like this, they have to have a few different strategies. So during the summertime, we have lots of birds that come here, so they migrate. They actually come here to Churchill to use this as habitat for nesting, for reproduction, and then when it starts to get cold again, they actually leave. Similar to beluga whales, they're here in the summertime, but as the ice starts to form and it gets cooler, they're going to move to other regions. And then if they're not adapted for the cold, like polar bears, when they can't migrate, then they have to find a strategy to stay here and overwinter. So a good example of that might be something like some of the amphibians. We have 2 species of amphibians here, and they're actually what we call freeze tolerant. So they can actually tolerate being frozen. So they're able to adapt by saying, okay, so it's going to be cold, but I'm going to freeze. And then in the next spring, they will reanimate and take advantage of those warm temperatures in the summertime. So those are a couple different strategies of other species that maybe aren't built for the cold, but still want to be here.
Great. Which 2 amphibians have that ability?
Yeah, so we have wood frogs here, which are in the ranid family of frogs, and then we also have boreal chorus frogs here, which are in the Pseudacris genus.
Very interesting. Thank you. All right, next question. Michael from Cranberry Portage has a question for polar bear researchers. Why is it important to your organization to study bears? So that could be a question for any of you. I know, Jill, do you have anything for that question from a parks perspective?
We don't study bears.
important to study anything, right? And so for us, studying bears is important because we want to learn more, and by learning more, we can help conserve them, but specifically, studying them over long periods of time is really important. And so if we just were to do a study and it's 1 year, maybe we can learn something, and maybe Leanne can help chime in here too, like a hearing study. We want to learn more about how polar bears hear. So that might be a kind of one-time study that could be important. Whereas if we're looking at a study like body condition or population size, we need time as a variable in that study in order to be able to learn something from it. So, you know, that, I guess, is part of the answer, but another part would be that, gosh, I'm not on camera much.
You are doing great.
Yeah, studying polar bears, I mean, it's not just about polar bears, right? Everything's connected. So if you learn something about polar bears and what's happening, say we do see a population decline, which we have seen in certain populations across the Arctic, Western Hudson Bay being one of them, the Beaufort Sea in Alaska being another. If you're seeing population decline in polar bears, it usually means that other things in the ecosystem are being affected as well. So what's happening with the seals? What's happening with the sea ice? What's happening with the Arctic cod? Everything is interconnected, and if polar bears are declining, what else might be happening in that ecosystem? And then even further, we know that with population decline in polar bears, it's linked to sea ice loss. And how does that affect humans? So everything is really interconnected, and I don't know if anyone has more to add there.
All of you study polar bears to some degree in what you do. Does anybody have anything else to add to that question?
I think that was a great answer.
Yeah, that's
Great. We have a question from Miller Place. Does the change in the sun's pattern impact polar bear behavior? Jeff, maybe I'll direct this to you.
Yeah, well, with the change in the sun's pattern, obviously in the Arctic, come summer solstice, where the sun actually doesn't drop out of the sky, right? So you get increased temperatures, therefore you have the melting of the sea ice. So the Churchill polar bears are part of the Western Hudson Bay population, and that population will leave the sea ice at the end of July, and they'll have to stay on land from July through November. So I guess the changing of the day is directly related to the amount of sea ice we have out there. So, you know, with hotter temperatures and, you know, stuff like that, the bears will have to be on land and, you know, have to keep themselves cool and, you know, things like that of that nature.
I'll just add a little bit to that. So one of the ways that we can sort of look at maybe not just how the sun's pattern, but the changes in day and night might affect bears is in Wapas National Park, where Jill works on some of the research camps. We have actually used wildlife cameras, or what we call camera traps, and we also have them here on the study center. And what that does is it allows us to have those camera traps take pictures of different animals that come around our facilities so that we can actually try to answer that question. Is there a behavioral pattern with particular times of day? For example, do they come around our facility more at night? Do they come more when there's no one there? Do they come more when there's activity at a particular location? So that's a really great question in terms of, does it matter during the day? Jeff talked about the longer annual cycle and how bears move, but to get at some of these more detailed questions, we can use pieces of technology to help us answer questions like that. Does the behavior change? So one thing we find around the center is it doesn't seem like there's necessarily a change with day. Like, it doesn't matter whether it's day or night, we still have bears coming around the center.
Great, thank you. Dave, I'm going to expand that question to include your perspective, from a tourist perspective, when you're out on the land and when you're teaching people about the area. Do sun patterns have an effect on what you do?
I mean, certainly as a tour guide out on the land, I would want to know when it was going to get dark to sort of head back towards a safe haven, a camp, a vehicle. I haven't noticed any difference in movement of polar bears at any time of the day. Certainly the summer months through to now, as there's more bears around, there seems to be more movement at this time of year. And I don't know whether that's to do with temperature or sea ice formation or daylight. I don't know if we have answers to why they're moving more at this time of year.
Sure, does anyone have an answer to that? Why there is more movement at this time of year?
Well, all of our bears that come off the sea ice in July, they spend a lot of their summer months in Wilpus National Park and points further south because of the way the sea ice recedes on Hudson's Bay. It recedes from the northwest, which is where it starts, to the southeast. So it all depends on where the bears get off the ice. And so as this time of the year where the migration is occurring, the bears are all working their way northwards up the coast for a couple of reasons. One, fresh water will freeze before salt water, and the way that the currents, I guess, go in Hudson's Bay is they go counterclockwise. So any of the ice that is free floating in the bay will start to stack up on those western shores because there's a couple shallow shelves. So all the bears that have been on land for all the summer, they're walking to those western shores of the bay because that's where they're going to capture their first seals of the year and they start their hunting. The sea ice will start to freeze and then it'll recede southeast until the bay is entirely frozen.
Great, thank you. All right, next question is coming from Sienna, grade 8 in Gillum. Jill, I'll direct this to you first. Does anybody ever name the polar bears? Or I guess re-identify if you see them year after year. Do you know the polar bears that come around town?
Well, the bears that are caught by the researchers, the Canadian Wildlife Service or Manitoba Conservation, are given a number, and that number is tattooed on their lip, and they also get 2 ear tags with that number. They're not given human names. When we're doing the polar bear whisker printing with the isomer group, the bears are not given a number, they're given a name, but they're not given human names. A theme is usually picked, like maybe countries in the world, and the bears are named after a country in one year. Or the next year it might be after a color. The researcher, Dr. Jane Waterman, who we work with on that project, doesn't like giving bears or any animal that she's researching a human name because she feels that that will bias the scientific work being done. So if you name whatever you're studying a name that you really like, you might focus more on that individual compared to an individual with a name that you don't like.
Great point. Anybody else have anything to contribute? Naming bears?
Yeah, I think certainly locally, we've one of the more famous bears in town was Dancer. He hasn't been spotted for a few years now, so we can assume he's gone. It was an old bear. Very recognizable by facial scarring. And I think a couple of years ago we had Zigzag. We've got Bratus, I've heard, is around again. So some of the bears have got very distinct, and mainly the male bears, have got very distinct facial scarring from fighting. And they can be recognized from time to time. The locals tend to give them a name, but certainly from a science point of view, you know, a bear called Fluffy versus a bear called like Fangs or something, I don't know, it'd certainly be like that bias focus for sure.
Thank you. Anybody else to add to that question?
We actually have a few named bears on our bear tracker, so you can go to our website, polarbearsinternational.org, and some of the collared bears on Hudson Bay, and now some with the GPS ear tags, they have a number, and just for on the internet, we have given some of them names for people that are supporting the research that funds, or putting together funding for that research. They get to give that bear a name. The likelihood we'd actually see it in person, very low. Maybe the people actually doing the mark and recapture work, the scientists might. But so if you go to our website, you can see a few names there.
Great, thank you. We have a question that I think we already just touched on. It comes from Angie in Gillum. Do you ever put items on polar bears or other animals to collect data and information? So Jill, you already spoke about tags, collars, and lip tattoos. Anything else that happens with bears or other animals?
It depends on the type of animal, like we said with our bears. All of our bears that have been handled by either Environment Canada Climate Change or the Polar Bear program are given the ear tag and lip tattoo. However, Environment Canada and Climate Change are also putting collars on females, and we're starting to, in conjunction with partnership with the University of Alberta, putting ear tagged transmitters on male bears and the sub-adult bears. The only reason we don't put a collar on them is because your male bears are gaining and losing so much weight out there that the collar will either fall off or it'll choke it out. So the technology's there, that the only way we're able to track these bears is through that GPS collar. The one downfall with, or the tags, the one downfall with it, the data is only going to last about 4 months because of the battery life. As well, there's other animals in the Arctic which we'll put collars on, such as the barren ground caribou that are part of the Camelariac herd. And then we're also doing some wolves. I understand that Dr. Jim Roth with the University of Manitoba is collaring a few foxes out in the park and stuff like that. So you're able to kind of follow along and track where those animals are moving.
Great, thank you. Next question. Students would like you, Jeff, to elaborate on how to get polar bears out of town if they're coming into town.
Well, we use a few methods. First and foremost, if we have a bear within the community, which is classified as zone number 1, we don't tolerate any bears within zone number 1, so it'll be immediately hazed. And most of the time, our hazing methods include shooting a cracker shell, which is it's a shotgun shell with a explosive charge that'll go out 30 40 yards, and it'll make a big bang, and then normally the bear will be scared off that way. We also use rubber bullets, the sirens and horns on our trucks. Sometimes if we have a helicopter available, we'll haze a bear that way, or it could be as little as me getting out on foot and walking behind a bear, similar to herding a cow. And just my presence is enough to get the bear into the direction that we want it to go. If our hazing methods don't work, what we'll do is go and proactively capture the bear, whether it be we set out a trap, or else we actually go up in a helicopter and immobilize that bear. And any of the bears that we do capture will go to the province's polar bear holding facility, and it'll stay for about 30 days.
Great, thank you very much. A question from a grade 12 bio student at R.D. Parker Collegiate in Thompson. Have any of you discovered any new organisms in the climate that you work in? And again, this is an open question. Maybe Jill, we'll start with you.
A few years ago, we were working on a Manitoba breeding bird atlas, and we did 4 years worth of work in the park, and we found golden eagles nesting in the park, and that was the first record of golden eagles. We found a few nests, and we actually put a camera up in one of the nests, and we published a paper in a journal about that finding.
Nice, thank you.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, very.
Not that I know of.
Okay, Dave?
No, I haven't seen anything. Seems to be quite a lot of red foxes around. I don't know if there's much data on how many there were in the past, but there certainly seem to be more and more red foxes each year coming into the area.
Can I add something on that? So I work a lot with Dr. Jim Roth, Jeff already mentioned him, with different fox work, and he worked here in the mid-90s, and all of the tundra dens in Wapask National Park were occupied by Arctic foxes only. There were no red foxes out on the tundra, they all lived in the trees. And now he's back, he came back, and he's been back for about 5 years now maybe, and a lot of those tundra dens are now occupied by red foxes. So that was part of the reason behind starting the collaring project. So we collared red foxes and Arctic foxes to see, like, how are the red foxes surviving out on the tundra? Are they changing feeding habits and feeding in a similar way to the Arctic foxes.
Great.
That's one of the questions.
Thank you. Leanne?
I think Churchill is a really interesting location to ask questions like this because it is in the transition between the boreal forest and the Arctic tundra. And so Jill gave a really great example of the interaction between red foxes and Arctic foxes, but there are many other species, you know, that are moving from the boreal forest out onto the Arctic tundra because we're at this edge of these two large biomes. So one of the projects about 10 years ago was actually to do an inventory of as many species as possible here in Churchill so that we have a baseline to compare to in the future. And that was done with DNA work to kind of tie back to that, one of those first questions we asked about DNA. So those were all recorded in the Barcode of Life database. So we can, in the future, hopefully look at how our species distribution is changing and basing it on particular data that we have from about now 10 years ago.
Great, thank you.
Well, you can go back about 30 years where you talk to some of the people that have spent their entire lives in Churchill. You didn't see moose 30 years ago. Now, probably it's through climate change that you're starting to get more willow growth and stuff like that. So as you know, the willows and stuff like that start to grow, so does the moose home range. So we're seeing a lot more moose now, and we're actually almost overrun with moose in some particular areas within Churchill here.
I wouldn't mind adding to that.
Absolutely.
Is if you are a grade 12 bio, it's an excellent question because you are studying evolution, adaptation. Yeah, I mentioned that we are at the edge of two biomes, and you know, trees kind of move in and out based on the climate at that particular point in time. But you could begin to explore how to identify all kinds of organisms in certain regions like the Arctic. And you're aware that sometimes speciation events occur, and you may be lucky enough to come across one through your studies and through your research methods up here. So I would, for you in particular, or anyone else out there in grade 12 bio who has a specific interest in biology, a lot of it has to do with counting and identifying, and this would be an excellent place for you to start.
Great, thank you. Great add-on to that. So we have another question. HS Paul students want to know if anything that you do is in partnership with the programs for polar bears at Assiniboine Park Zoo, and actually I'd like to start with that. Absolutely, there's partnership with the Assiniboine Park Zoo within Frontier School Division and what we do as well as up here in Churchill. So we just are still coming off of a fantastic Envirothon event that we hosted here in May, and one of the amazing presentations we had was Leanne partnering with Dr. Stephen Peterson at Assiniboine Park Zoo, all about citizen science as well. So definitely from a school division's perspective, everybody again is connected and working together. So would you like to add any of the organizations' partnerships with Assiniboine Park Zoo?
Yeah, I'll maybe just add on to that, and it connects with KT at Polar Bears International. So one of the projects is looking at beluga whales and trying to understand things about their social structure and how they use their habitat here. And one of the ways we can do that is to help and have citizens engaged. And so the Assiniboine Park Zoo, the lead scientist, Dr. Stephen Peterson on the project, has a Beluga Bits program, which you can visit Zooniverse and hear more about how to help him out with that project. But the link with Polar Bears International is through the Beluga boat and the camera, live camera that's mounted on that boat during the summertime. So I'll maybe let KT talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy. In a lot of partnerships, a lot of these amazing things happen by organizations coming together, but we have worked with Assiniboine Park Zoo, with explore.org, to mount a live camera underneath the water under a Zodiac. And so it goes out during the beluga whale season, and it streams live to the internet so people can ask questions, we do live chats, but also people can take snapshots. So like a photo from that camera, and all of those snapshots go to this database, And Stefan Peterson with the Assiniboine Park Zoo is trying to take that data and learn from it, learn information. So that's a really great collaboration with lots of different people. The Assiniboine Park Zoo is also a member of Polar Bears International's Arctic Ambassador Center Network. So they are a zoo that we work with. We work with lots of zoos. More people in North America go to zoos than all major sporting events combined. So we work with zoos to make sure that the most current, accurate information about polar bears and climate change is reaching the public. And so they are one of our network zoos that we work with to get the word out about polar bears and climate change, and hopefully inspire people to take action to help conserve their habitat.
Great, thank you. Next question. HS Paul students want to know, our students from R.D. Parker in Thompson are wondering if there's any opportunities for summer students or programs where they can get started in Churchill, and if so, does this include any accommodations? Arif, I'd like to start with you from a frontier perspective and possibly our 4+1 program.
Sure. So I won't extend into the Wapas National Park or the Azuma programs because that's more Jill's specialty, but the last couple of years, Frontier School Division has entered what we do call the 4+1 system, in which case January and June are specifically for one particular elective in high school. So a June elective that we had offered was a brand new elective about a year and a half ago, and it was offered in affiliation with the study center, Leanne and Stephanie Dennison, who was here at that time too. And so it gave the opportunity for students who wanted to take an elective called Current Topics in Science 30S, which was open to a select few. And what we did throughout that month is the students had some class time as well, but the highlight of that whole course was them coming out here to the study center on a daily basis, having extraordinary lunches at the cafeteria, but more specifically working with the actual researchers at that particular time. And they got to do field work and field testing and have these incredible conversations with people who are international researchers come here specifically to do their work. And so our students were able to gain credit by coming here and working with them and then going back to the classroom for an entire month in June. So we haven't explored the idea of having an exchange-like program in Frontier at Duke of Marlborough School, but talks will be.
Talks have been in the works for a little while, so hopefully. Matt, I know you're behind the scenes right now, but do you have anything to add? I know you're highly involved in the 4+1 program from Churchill.
We're also doing a tourism course in conjunction with parks, and students end up going up to a bus park in Esterland, which I was talking about, and talking to the different organizations that Dave came and talked to them about tourism and about his travels. We went to talk to conservation about how their interaction with tourists are and the different companies in town as well.
Great, thank you. All right.
Yes. I would maybe just add there's always opportunities for once you're finished your high school degree to get jobs here at the study center. So one example would be Beth Hampson, who's one of our program assistants. She first came here on a high school program at this time of year, which was in grade 10, and now she's here as an employee at the study center, and she's heading back to go back to school next fall.
Thank you. Anybody else? Programs for students?
Currently, it's just for students in Churchill, but we do have at Polar Bears International a couple internships with the Beluga boat. So opportunities for high school students to go out on the Beluga boat and help educate people with their knowledge about Churchill and this region, write blogs. So for anyone at the Duke of Marlborough School, we're hoping to expand that program, and we're currently building a new headquarters in town in Churchill. And we're super excited to be expanding our ability to work with parks, to work with the school, to work with the study center, and maybe be able to offer some more things. So maybe not this year, but hopefully down the pike we'll be able to do a little bit more. And like Leanne said, you know, if you're motivated, you know, after maybe there's opportunities, especially during the tourism season, for internships, volunteer opportunities, ways to get involved.
Thank you. The second half of that question was accommodations during these programs. Where do people stay?
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Parks Canada has quite a few different student positions for high school students and university students, and you can apply for them through the FSWEP program, the Federal Student Work Program. Everything from helping with maintenance, finance and administration, interpreters. We also have positions at the zoo in Winnipeg because we're a partner with them as well. So we have a couple interpreters that work in the zoo and talk about Churchill. And there's also, I believe, some kind of zookeeper program through the zoo. And as for the accommodations piece, Parks Canada doesn't pay for accommodations for the students, but we do help them find accommodations in town.
Okay. Great. Anybody else with accommodations?
Yeah, here at the study center we host researchers, so we do have accommodations available on site for some of our summer students or for students who might be here on a field course, or the isomer students when they come to visit will stay here at the study center usually for a couple of nights before they go out into the park as well.
I would like to add, not so much about accommodations, but just regarding the elective that I was speaking about before is also offered again in June, if I'm not mistaken, with the science teacher here at Duke of Marlborough School, Mr. Marcel Gluchowski. So if you are interested in the kind of work that they'll be doing throughout that month, then please contact Mr. Manning from the principal from the school. You can contact myself from Frontier School Division, or Jacqueline, of course, Matthew Bunka from Frontier School Division, and we'd be happy to maybe consider having a conversation with your classes. So the science class here, who's engaging in all that research and engaging in that field work, can actually speak with you specifically about what they're doing and how they're enjoying it.
Great, thank you. So I'm looking here, we are only 8 minutes away from the end of our session, and we probably have close to 40 questions coming in from our virtual audience that we didn't get to yet. So what I'm going to do is compile all of the questions, give them to you, and hopefully in the next few days you can send the answers back on behalf of your organization. I'll compile that and I'll send this out to all of you. However, a reminder that we're also having a stream this afternoon from a youth perspective, featuring students from the Duke of Marlborough School here in Churchill, and some of the questions can be answered at that time as well from our youth perspective. So before we do wrap up though, I would like to give each of our panelists an opportunity, again, with the focus of this stream being Subarctic Careers in Science. Is there anything that you would like to add on, or final words that you would like to say to our audience here this morning? Jeff, we'll start with you.
I don't have too much to say, but I just want to thank you for tuning in and listening, and learning about the Canadian Subarctic. And it's a really neat place to study and to live and to work and everything. Not a lot of people get the opportunity to do it, but if you ever do get a chance to come up north, like, jump on it. It's a life changing, a life altering experience.
Thank you. Leanne?
Yeah, I would just follow up with what Jeff said. Same idea that it's a really interesting place. So if you ever get an opportunity to head this direction, take it. If that's not an opportunity that comes available, definitely find the thing that really interests you and the thing that you're passionate about, whether it's science or literature or art, and follow that, because I think that's what will really interest you in your career and your job into the future. For me, it was science. I'm a chemist, and I love working outdoors, so I think I found the perfect job or the perfect combo to keep me happy. So I wish the same for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, likewise, I think working in science, I think it's not just about the academic skills. Coming here to the Arctic to work is to have a few hard skills as well. If you can fix a window, fix a door, if you can pump a tire up and get an ATV started, these are all great skills. And definitely, any opportunity to get up here, stick that on your resume, that you've worked with small machines, small engines, carpentry. We're out in the wilds here, lots of camps.
Thank you, great point.
Yeah, exactly. Up here, if you can be a jack of all trades, sometimes it just gets your foot in the door, and it might not be exactly what you envisioned at first, but it might lead to other opportunities. I would encourage you to follow your curiosity and to remember that the jobs that you might have in the future might not exist today. My job that I currently have didn't exist when I was in high school. I've created it, and as technology changes, as the world changes, you very well may have a job that doesn't even exist currently. So follow your curiosity, work hard, find opportunities, and I think you'll find yourself in a really interesting place.
Thank you. Jen?
Thanks everybody for listening today. You guys had a lot of good questions, and I agree with what everybody here said. There are lots of opportunities to get to Churchill and check the place out, so if that's of interest to you, I would highly recommend it. And also, if opportunities come to you, check them out, and it might change your future and your career path. Thanks.
Thank you. Great point. Irene?
I wouldn't mind starting off just by busting a myth. And I think that myth is that science is all about going to university and getting a degree and then going to do graduate studies or becoming a doctor or a dentist or something. That's not really, that's sort of a very traditional perspective. There are thousands and thousands of jobs out there that don't revolve around getting degrees and postdoctoral fellowships and stuff that we've never heard of before. A lot of the positions that we work with in science are structured through colleges or just through experience, and it always starts with the experience. And if you're drawn to something or somewhere in the world like the Arctic, then go to that place and experience it. And if there is a science in there, there likely will be, then hopefully it opens your eyes and the evolution of your ideas begins to take more shape. Just remember that it's not all about those professional positions that everyone expects people to go into, but rather it's a broad, vast community of people that work together in a variety of ways, shapes, and forms to produce the knowledge that we have today.
And all scientific in nature.
And all science in nature, yes.
Great, thank you so much. So with that, we're going to wrap up this morning's session. Again, I encourage you to join us at 1 o'clock Central Time for our Subarctic Careers in Science Exploration from a youth perspective, and we'll be able to answer more of your questions at that time. However, with the vast amount of questions that came in online, and even the questions that you submitted in your registration, I will compile those. We will send out to you information, websites, links from each organization and representative here, and hopefully you will have those by early next week. Again, I would like to thank Frontier School Division for making this even possible. Right-click technology within Frontier, we appreciate all of your effort and time to make this happen for us. Duke of Marlborough School, Matt, Principal, Mr. Manning, all the students and staff at D of M, you are continually supporting us in making these events happen, so thank you. Everybody here at the Churchill Northern Study Center for hosting us once again and participating in everything that we do. And again, all of our local panelists, it's amazing to get this information to such a wide range of students, and it's been a fantastic hour with you. So again, thank you. Stay tuned at 1 o'clock, and we will chat soon.